Hello, BookTube. We're down here in puppy territory again for a bookshelf tour, but it's not a penguin bookshelf tour. Instead, we're going to take a break for just this video to do a bookshelf tour with a purpose, with a higher purpose in mind. Because yesterday, when I went to the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston, I got this big Megillah of a book, The Collected Stories of Mavis. A great collection of stories there, just fantastic. She's such a great writer, and as is true with the best collected stories collections, when you read a chunk of them in a row, the sensation of her greatness as a storyteller grows instead of weakens, which is rare. Usually reading lots and lots of big collected version of short stories in a row for an author will show you their gimmicks very clearly and strip away a lot of your appreciation. But with the greats, that doesn't happen. With the greats, you feel like you're reading, the collected stories itself is a great work. And so when I got this book, I knew perfectly well that it was going to come into this room. This room is the Valhalla of books. This is where these are my essentials. And then my broader extended library is elsewhere. But I knew that this book was going to come in this room, and it's also going to join the kernel of a collection that I have of collected short stories, of 20th century great collected short stories. There's only 2 volumes in that collection so far, John Cheever and Eudora Welty. I'm waiting just as I get them all. I'll get Flannery O'Connor eventually. I'll get a bunch of people eventually. But I got this 3rd one. And I know that it has to go in this room, and I know that it has to go on that shelf. And that shelf is full. So something has to give. So I have to move something from that shelf to somewhere else. I have to make that decision. And I thought, as long as I have to do that, why not you do it with me? So we're going to do a bookshelf tour of this shelf, and then we're going to make a decision on what is going. So the key thing we'll be looking for is something here obviously a misfit? Is there something here that obviously doesn't fit with the other books? Is there a double here? Is there a book I no longer want here? Stuff like that. These are the hard decisions that you all have to make when you're fitting books in your section. So the first one we have is a hardcover of T.H. White's The Once and Future King. This has an interesting cover design. All the blurbs are on the front. And it's just T.H. White's absolutely glorious novel, in my opinion, the greatest fantasy novel ever written, about King Arthur and Merlin and Guinevere and Lancelot. It's just an amazing, amazing book. If you know The Once and Future King only from its first section, The Sword and the Stone, you are missing out on one of the most adult, most multifaceted, most amazing and moving works of 20th century fiction. So here it is. Obviously, that seems like a keeper. And what have we got? Oh, okay, great. Oh, I've shown you this before. This is The Assassin's Cloak, a gigantic collection of diary entries spanning just centuries. And chosen, it's edited by Irene and Alan Taylor, and it's chosen with such skill that this is just an amazing book to read. Just incredible. You can turn it to any page and find... okay, for June 1st, it goes in chronological order just through a calendar. For June 1st, in 1837, George Sand wrote, "I waken feeling dull. The weather is neither cheerful nor depressing. It makes me feel restless. The trees are tossed by gusty, fantastic wind. The sun is hidden. If I put on my dressing gown, I am too hot. If I take it off, I am cold. Leaden day in which I shall accomplish nothing worthwhile. Tired and apathetic brain. I have been drinking tea in the hope that it would carry this mood to a climax and so put an end to it." And then a generation later, in 1912, Franz Kafka on the same date wrote nothing. And it just goes on and on like that. This is such an incredible book. Especially, you have to have it if you keep a diary, as I do. This is the greatest diary collection that's ever been done. So I think that's a keeper too. Okay. David Goldblatt's History of the Sport that we refer to Americans. It's known all the world over as football. In America, we refer to it as Fahrenheit. I mean, soccer. And the ball is round. It's a story of soccer, a global history of soccer, and it's tremendously well done. I'm no sports fan, as you know, but I often do like sports writing. So that's a strong one to stay. Victor Callahan's Mammals of North America, an absolutely wonderful book that is full of beautiful drawings. It's full of beautiful line drawings by Francis Jacques. Let me see if I can show you one of these. There, yeah, there's a musk ox. And on and on. It's beautifully illustrated. It's full of natural history of these animals, and also the author's personal recollections of encountering a lot of them in the wild. Just an incredible, incredible book. Oh, look at this thing. Oh my. This is Craig Williamson's complete Old English poems. Look at the size of that thing. This is just, it's just a beautiful, beautiful production. It's all one translator's view. It's tons and tons of critical apparatus and scholarly notes and whatnot. It's all of the treasures of Old English in one volume until we get more, until more survive. The thin thing here. Oh, fantastic. All right, this is Glenn Maxwell's On Poetry. A thin thing of his, just a treatise on poetry that is quotable on every page. It's one of the best studies of poetry I've ever read. Just fantastic. Okay. All right, this next one is the Michael Katz translation of Crime and Punishment. And it is on this shelf not only because I really like the translation, but because for the very first time in my life, I have a blurb on the cover of the dust jacket. They didn't wait till the paperback. They asked me ahead of time if I would read and maybe give them a blurb for the hardcover, and that was a tremendous thrill. It hasn't been duplicated so far. Okay. All right. This is a copy of Myself as Witness by James Goldman, the author of the play The Lion in Winter. This is a novel about King John, the luckless, feckless, conscienceless son of Henry II and King Eleanor of Aquitaine. And its narrator is Gerald of Wales, who we saw on our Penguin tour, and a medieval best-selling historian and anecdotalist who is the perfect choice to be a narrator of a novel like this. It's a tremendous historical novel, just tremendous. So we haven't really found a weak spot so far. What's next? Oh, okay. This is the hardcover of Thomas Harris's Hannibal. A very severe, unadorned thing. This is a gigantic novel of his that really brings to fruition the character that he introduced in Red Dragon and then made immortal in Silence of the Lambs. This is a gigantically ambitious novel. It's so good. It's so good. But I mean, it has a horrible ending. And it's a little bit lopsided because it was originally born out of research into a totally different book, and it kind of shows. The seams are still there. But boy, oh boy, what an endeavor. What an amazing endeavor. What is this next one? I don't seem to have a dust jacket. Okay. All right. This is Thomas Bulfinch. This is The Legends of Charlemagne, illustrated by N.C. Wyeth in these old Scribner editions that have the N.C. Wyeth illustrations. This is Roland and all that sort of stuff. Monstrously popular in its time. Totally forgotten now. I don't think the person on the street stopped and asked anything about Charlemagne would know the first thing. I don't think they do. But once upon a time, a century ago, these were much more popular. This is I don't know. It's kind of beaten up. It has all of its illustrations, but it's kind of beaten up. And it doesn't have a dust jacket. So, all right, we may have come across our first weak spot. What is this next one? Okay, this is pre-20th century American and European painting and sculpture from the Boston Athenaeum, which is a private library here in Boston that is wonderful. It has to be seen to be believed. If you're a stranger to Boston, you won't. I wonder if there's a picture of the Athenaeum in here, aside from the artwork. Probably not. No. Okay. The Athenaeum, you can Google it online. It's practically a museum on its own. It is a working library though, and this is a collection of an annotated collection detailing a lot of the artwork that's in the Arboretum or the Athenaeum. All of the examples of which are in the back in black and white plates. So that also is a weak spot, right? I can easily imagine a big full color art guide to the Athenaeum that maybe includes some history as well. And it wouldn't be this. This obviously attended an exhibit at the Athenaeum. This was obviously the companion volume to an exhibit. So and what? Oh my! Oh goodness gracious! Look at this thing. Okay. This is Boston and the Boston Legend by the great Lucius Beebe. Let me show you the frontispiece here. This is just delightful. Oh my! Oh goodness! This is just a fully illustrated history of Boston. Oh, okay, all right, okay, and then we get to the other books in the kernel: the collected stories of Eudora Welty and the collected stories of John Cheever, two classic collections of stories. So if we put those back, we put the Cheever on there, and we put the Eudora Welty on there, and then we have the Mavis Gallant. So we put that on there as well. Okay, so all three of those are now where they belong, and what we have to do is figure out where everything else is going to go. The Lucius Beebe, obviously, is going back on the shelf. I'm going to hold the Athenaeum book aside. I think it might be a weak spot. And I'm going to hold the Charlemagne book aside as well. I'm tempted to hold Hannibal aside because Red Dragon and Silence of the Lambs are elsewhere, and they should all be together. But for now, I'll put it here because it's so tremendously impressive. Then My Selfless Witness, yes, of course. The one and only novel narrated by Gerald of Wales. Then Crime and Punishment, not only because I genuinely do recommend this translation, but also because I admit I'm human, sorta, kinda, and having my name on a hardcover is just, it was just a thrill. Then the complete Old English poems, that's got to be there. Mammals of North America is a classic. I reread stories in it all the time and compare notes because I also have lots and lots of stories from the wild of lots and lots of the animals that the author encounters on his own. Then let's see, The Ball is Round. We'll put that up there. The Assassin's Cloak, absolutely, a keeper. And then the last one is The Once and Future King, which I have. Penguin did a set of beautiful decorative hardcovers of science fiction and fantasy classics, and one of them was The Once and Future King. And I also have a trade paperback of this, but I still think I want to keep this one. This is the copy I fell in love with. I think I still want to keep that in there, and that is actually a perfect fit with Glenn Maxwell's On Poetry being thin enough to go sideways on the top and still leave room. So there's still room on that shelf. I really think the Athenaeum thing is a weak spot. I don't know quite what it's doing there. The Legend of Charlemagne, I of course love these. I love Bullfinch. I know every word of them. I've read Bullfinch's mythology a million times. So I'm thinking I might want to keep this in here until I find a better version, something in better condition. And it can go sideways. It can fit sideways on the shelf. So there we go. Right? We have done it. We have made a shelf with room for Mavis Gallant by getting rid of only something a third its size. Only this Athenaeum thing, which I won't get rid of. I'll just put it somewhere else. So there you go. I had to reorganize a bookshelf here in this room in Valhalla, and I took you along for the ride. We'll get back to penguins next time. Thank you, BookTube.